Does it seem to you that good character is a thing of the past? Hello and welcome back. My name is Steve McMurray. In this video, I want to briefly explore how God restrains mankind from creating a one-world government. Recently, my wife and I enjoyed a movie entitled My All-American. It is the story of a young man named Fred Steinmark who was a seeming underdog as an American football player because of his size. Yet he excelled in the safety position for the Texas Longhorns in the 1960s. The story highlights this young man's excellent spirit and his love for his family, his faith, and the game of football. Having helped to lead his team to a national championship, he tragically lost a leg due to bone cancer and was unable to play in the Cotton Bowl against Notre Dame that year. He is the quintessential All-American that those of my generation aspired to. The critics decry the story as too unreal to life because it did not highlight the flaws of his character enough. It seems that the critics are compelled to lower the standard in order to feel comfortable in their own skin. Be that as it may, it is a good story and displays the character of a man that is all but lost and subject to ridicule by today's cynical society. It reminds me of what we read in Isaiah 5, verse 20. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. We live in a rapidly changing world. The values of virtuous society are being completely turned on its head. That moral center that was proven to be a blessing to any people is now thought to be a curse. The Apostle Paul spoke of this as something that he called the mystery of lawlessness that is already at work in the world. What is the mystery of iniquity or lawlessness that he wrote of in his second letter to the Thessalonians? And how is it already at work? A trip back into time reveals what may be the answer. In Genesis 11:9, it describes a time after the flood when all of Noah's descendants were coming together as one people with one language. They were building a place of centralized worship and commerce called the Tower of Babel. The King James Version translates God's commentary on this development. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. Now this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. Well, bear with me a little while I dissect this verse. Now I am no Hebrew or Greek scholar, but I get to play one in this blog, so take what I have to say next with a great deal of discernment. The phrase, this they begin to do, is literally, they produce defilement and desecration to pollute themselves. The following phrase, now nothing, is an absolute prohibition of what is to follow. Something like, it absolutely cannot be, or absolutely not. What follows the phrase, absolutely cannot be, is the phrase, will be restrained. Now this phrase is translated various ways. It has a metaphoric usage of grape gatherers, speaking of those who secretively plot destruction, such as Jeremiah 49:9 and Obadiah 1:5. It is also used to speak of something inaccessible, like a fortified high wall, as in Isaiah 25, verse 2. Or mighty things, that is, something mysterious or hard to be understood, as in Jeremiah 33, verse 3. Now the next phrase, which they have imagined, can literally be translated, a wicked plot, as in Psalm 37:12, quote, the wicked plots against the just and gnashes upon him with his teeth, unquote. To do means to produce or accomplish. Now from these observations, is it a stretch to translate this as follows? Quote, they produce defilement and desecration to pollute themselves. It absolutely cannot be allowed for this destructive, wicked, or lawless plot or mystery to be accomplished. Now this is a bit different from how it is more frequently translated. Quote, now absolutely nothing will be able to restrain their evil designs from happening, unquote. For example, Genesis 11:6 in the New Living Translation renders it this way. Look, he said, the people are united. They all speak the same language. After this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them. Now, does it seem strange that God would in one sentence declare that absolutely nothing is available to restrain this from happening, and then in the next breath effect something that does exactly that? Perhaps not. Perhaps it is just evidence that nothing is impossible with God. Yet in view of what God's restraining purpose here is, doesn't it make as much sense to translate it as God stating that it cannot be allowed and then following through on his declaration? Such a rendering emphasizes the absolute control that God has in restraining the affairs of men. in the same way that he says to the seas in Job 38, verse 8 and 11, quote, "Hitherto shalt thou come, but no further, and here shall thy proud waves be stayed." Unquote. In other words, the mystery of iniquity, or the mystery of lawlessness, is mankind's grand scheme of making the world of one language and, if necessary, one center of worship. The only restraint on this scheme is that the Holy Spirit of God himself intervened by coming down and confounding their languages. And this is why we read in 2 Thessalonians 2 and 7, "Now he who restrains will continue to do so until he be taken out of the way." In other words, Paul is saying that in the same way that the Spirit of God has worked in the past, such as the Tower of Babel, he will continue to do until he is removed from the scene. Now, in Paul's day, the mystery of lawlessness was at work in the Roman expansion and amalgamation of people groups throughout the Mediterranean world. Caesar worship was designed to be the unifying factor of all of these people groups. However, the Holy Spirit indwelling the church empowered Christians to refuse to bow to this one worldview and centralized worship. It's no wonder, then, that the Roman Emperor Nero declared Christians to be heretics and enemies of the state. He had them brutally killed at every opportunity. It stands to reason, then, that when the church preaches separation from the world, we also are anathema and hated by those who desire the world to be one. As long as the Spirit of God is resident in his church, she is a heretic to this worldview and subject to the world's ridicule and persecution. However, according to the Apostle Paul in 2 Thessalonians 2 and 7, when the church is quote-unquote caught up, then the restraining work of the Holy Spirit will be taken from the earth as well. This revelation of the work of the Holy Spirit then begs the challenging question for every real Christian. Am I living for the one true God, or am I living for the false one world? Or to put it another way, is the church in these last days changing sweet for bitter and bitter for sweet? May God help us to consider our ways in these last days.